Hey boys and girls, so it was officially Monday, May 30th. Sadly, I did not do a video yesterday because I was too tired. I was doing work with the HVAC ductwork in my house. And so by the end of that, I was like, do I want to do another hour-long video today on top of the work that I did? And I said no. So I was lazy. I didn't grind when I should have ground. But oh well, I'm back again today. And that's the important thing. Is even if you're lazy for a day, just don't be lazy for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. Get back on the horse and get out there and go watch a stupid movie. So I figured I went to see Xmen Apocolypse today. The TLDW version of it is I walked out probably about halfway into it and figured I would talk about that today. So there are going to be a lot of spoilers here. Mainly, I hate to call them spoilers. Like when you say spoiler, you think a spoiler is, I don't know, like some big scene in the movie, like in Captain America Civil War, when Ant-Man grows in size instead of shrinking in size. If I had known that beforehand, that would have been a spoiler. There wasn't anything there to much spoil. Basically, I don't know what's really happened with his latest X-Men series. I have to say, as cheesy and as goofy as the first series of X-Men was, I actually cared about those X-Men. So, I don't know, were there 3? There are 3 of those movies. Again, I don't know, like with Metacritic or Rotten Tomatoes or whatever, like how they scored. But I actually cared about those X-Men. Like those X-Men, I was worried if they lived or died. And what I'm finding these latest versions of the X-Men is I just don't care. I just truly and utterly don't give a crap about the characters. It's kind of like with Star Wars now. Not Star Wars. Well, Star Wars. I don't like Star Wars either. But it's kind of like with Star Trek now. Where, Star Trek, the reason people cared about Star Trek is because they cared about the characters. They wanted to see them succeed. They had a psychic interest or whatever, a psychological interest in the characters and wanted to see them get ahead. And so, like when you had Spock die, I think it was in Wrath of Khan. When you had Spock die, 20, 30 years ago in Wrath of Khan. I mean, I remember being a kid and it like hit me and it was like, oh my gosh, Spock died. Oh, the horror, right? Where then, in the reboot with Wrath of Khan, Kirk dies. And honestly, I could have cared less. Honestly, truly, to the bottom of my soul, I could have cared less if Kirk died. Like, if Kirk had just stayed dead, it would have been okay. It would have been fine with me. Because I don't give a damn about Kirk. I don't care about Kirk. I don't care about Spock. I don't care about any of them. They're like, I don't know. They're like props. It's kind of like that's with movies nowadays. With a lot of these movies, it's like it's all props. Like it's supposed to be props and actors. And now it just seems like props. It's just like organic props. That's an organic prop walking by, right? Right? So I went off to see X-Men Apocalypse today, and I was looking forward to X-Men Apocalypse because I do like the superhero movies. So I'm not sure if it's really like I like the superhero movies, but again, I like sci-fi movies. I like good sci-fi movies. And again, I come from a generation when we didn't have a lot of good sci-fi fare, and so you watch anything even vaguely close to sci-fi. So I was excited because this is vaguely close to sci-fi, and when I was a kid, I read comic books, and I actually read, I think, the series that this is basically based off of, like when it came out. So it was Evolutionary Wars. I think it was Evolutionary Wars. I had quite a few of the Evolutionary Wars. And that was like one of the first crossovers. Like now it probably seems normal in comic books. I don't know. I haven't read a comic book in years. But like it was like one of the first, may have been the first, one of the first, where the storyline actually crossed over all of these different comic books. So, instead of having an X-Men storyline and an X-Factor storyline and an X-Force storyline, it was all of them. So I do remember the basic storyline from the past, and that's why I wanted to see this movie, is because I remember, like, as a kid, how much it, like, affected me. Again, it affected me as a kid, but it did affect me. You know what I'm saying? And I remember, like, that was the interesting thing. Like, I really wanted to see how they dealt with Angel. Because Angel is the X-Man with wings. And now, like, originally, see, Angel as an X-Men with wings was Angel for a long time, and he had his big old wings for like a long time, and you really got to know the character, and you really got to care about the character, so on and so forth. Like, he had those white old fluffy wings for years, right? That was probably the 80s when they did the whole blue thing to him. So, you know, like 30 years or whatever. And then I think his wings get cut off or something. Like something brutal and nasty. So, I mean, it's like this character that you really are attached to. This character that the storyline goes back, I think, to the very first, like, X-Men. And then his wings get cut off or they get damaged. And so he's crushed about that. And then somehow, again, it's been a long time, he gets turned into the blue version of Angel with those metal wings and all of that. And he really has an anger towards him. He really has like this cutting edge. And I think that was the good thing that Marvel always did. I didn't really find that DC Comics did, is they could really show the transitions between good to bad characters, or for bad to good characters. I mean, that's the whole thing with Magneto. Magneto is this nasty, horrible, evil villain that you kind of hate to say that you understand in a lot of ways. And that was the thing with Angel, is it was as a way to really show a character that you know, because even with Magneto started out as evil, but like with Angel, I mean, you had 30 years of knowing this character to be a good, kind, blah 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 character, and then they go through this transition that turns them into this blue, you know, whatever, and just much harder and much whatever. So I was really interested to see how they were going to handle Angel, especially since I don't think he was in the other ones, was he? I don't even know. Like I said, these X-Men show. Like, it's funny, like the Disney and the Disney Marvel universe, I remember quite a bit. The X-Men one, it's not so memorable. So I was really curious, like, how they were going to deal with Angel, and I was curious how they were going to deal with Magneto, and I was curious about some of these other things. And so going into it, I had real high hopes, because again, this was a storyline I knew. I think, you know, more or less I knew from the kid, Evolutionary Wars. You know, they're characters, and so you want to go and you want to see them on screen. You're like, okay, I want to see how this plays out. But then the problem is, and again, this is what happens in the movies nowadays, is that the actors are simply sets, or they're simply, you know, whatever, props on the stage. And so, like, they start off with the Apocolypse guy, whatever the hell his name is, and it's in the very beginning, back in Egypt, 3600 BC. And they have him, like, on a bed, and then they have these other mutants around. So, like, that's an interesting concept, because, like, again, the whole idea of mutants, especially when you go back and you read the books, was they're supposed to be kind of like this product of the nuclear age. Like, mutants were new. And so you go back, so 3600 BC, so this would be, it's either 5,600 years ago or 3,600 years ago, a long fucking time ago, they have mutants, and they have, like, real mutants. And so that would have been something interesting to play with, to look at. It's like, oh, okay, we thought mutants were part of the new age of mankind. This is obviously way before nuclear reaction or any of that kind of stuff. Where did these mutants come from? Like, what is the storyline here? And there really wasn't any storyline there. There wasn't anything that made a damn bit of sense. You see all this stuff where the Apocalypse guy is going to get transferred into somebody else's body so he could take the power, and you're like, okay. And then you see there's other mutants around him, so you're like, okay. But you don't really understand, like, that guy that he's about to take control over. You don't understand, is he a slave? Did he agree to this? Does he think the guy's a god? Is he getting money for it? There's no real storyline there. There's no real storyline with the mutants around there. And then there are these guards that are supposed to be protecting everything, and then there's no storyline to it. You just get the hint that they're nefarious guards, and so at some point they give, like, a hand signal, and then they send these big stones that go down, and somehow you can use, like, 4 or 5 or 6 big slabs of rock to entirely destroy an entire pyramid. So this, like, temple area is inside, like, this massive pyramid. And so they knock down the pyramid, and then there's this whole scene, who the hell cares? Basically, the Apocalypse guy gets stuck underneath this and stays there for 36 to 5,600 years. But, like, you have this entire first bit that would be very interesting to explore, especially when you think about the whole concept of mutants and the whole thing, like with a lot of the idea with the whole mutant thing. Again, like I say, if you look at the 80s or the 70s, like when I was reading comic books, it was like you couldn't talk about being gay back then. You know, transgender was off the table. There were so many things that were off the table. And so, like, one of the things with the X-Men, the idea is beyond the powers. It's more that they have these hidden secrets that if they tell the world will savage them, the world will abuse them. And again, like I say, the whole thing with being gay, or like AIDS, like HIV and AIDS. I mean, I remember that was, you couldn't talk about that back then. There was a lot of things that you couldn't talk about. And so basically, like the power, the mutant power is kind of like the special effect, the cool thing to look at. But the real storyline is that you are different. And if you let the world know that you are different, they will attack you. And so you have this whole thing, like thousands of years ago, with these mutants that are different. But then there's no subplot there. There's no even fucking plot there. Like I say, it doesn't even make sense. There's not even enough of a plot you really know what's happening. You see him there, blah, 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 voodoo, voodoo, voodoo. Then soldiers destroy an entire pyramid with a couple of blocks. You don't even know. And so that would be an interesting thing. Like if you're looking at the X-Men franchise, kind of like the idea of how were mutants seen 3,000 years ago? Were they seen as gods? Were they seen as warriors? Did they have benefits in society, but they were still separated away? So I mean, that might be an interesting thing. Like they are considered the gods of society, but they are a step apart. Or were they fully integrated? Or again, I mean, because that's the whole thing with the X-Men. There's a lot of social subtext there that again, you know, gets glossed over with fist fights and that kind of thing. But like I say, there was absolutely none of that. So he disappeared, you know, blah blah blah. Then basically somehow, you know, this woman. You don't even know why the woman is there. So this woman is in the Middle East for some reason, and then she hits a guy for some reason, and then pulls up a rug and finds a hole, and then goes down the hole, again, for some reason. You don't really understand what the hell's going on here. And then when she goes down the hole, that shines a light, and that light hits a rock, and that light starts to glow, and then that somehow brings this guy back to life, and there's a big explosion, and you're just kind of sitting there like, okay. Right? There's just like all this stuff, and then you go over and you're like at the school for the gifted, you know, Xavier and the whole school for the gifted, and there's all these conversations about you know, the X-Men or whatever, but like the X-Men aren't there. Like Charles Xavier has decided to get rid of the X-Men, but you're like, but it's a movie about the X-Men. And again, I feel like with some of these movies, like we saw it with like Dawn of Justice and like some of this other stuff. Like, they start making the main characters think way too much. Like, they're trying to create way too much of a story arc. It's like, it's a fucking comic book, dude. Like, literally, if you go back and you read X-Men #1 from who the hell knows when, 1930 or whatever. I have, like, a reprint of it I got when I was a kid. Like, X-Men #1 starts with them going fighting people. Like, there is no origin story to X-Men #1. X-Men #1, they start. Lights and sirens are going off. This is who you need to stop. Go to it, right? But oh my God, they're making this whole long thing. But then you go there and you see all these kids at the school for the gifted, but they don't really seem to really show off their gifts. They really don't seem. It just looks like a school with like kids running around, and like even like the characters that you do recognize, they don't really show them off at all. Again, in a little flash, like they had Dazzler. You remember Dazzler? I don't know if Dazzler's still around. She's a stupid little teenager kid that like shoots freaking like fireworks out of her finger. I actually used to love Dazzler, just to show you guys can like female characters too. Like I remember Dazzler. I remember Dazzler enough to remember, hey, like I saw her on the screen. Well, it's Dazzler. But they didn't really seem to do anything with her. She was just like, yeah, she's that. Maybe they did something later, but they kind of just seemed to get rid of her. And so, you know, it's going along, and then what is there? There's an explosion at the school, so they go, and you know, there's this big boom and everything explodes and Quicksilver does his thing. Quicksilver is a good character. I do like Quicksilver. But he goes and does his thing. But it's like they blow up like the SR-71. So, I mean, this is the 1980s and like the SR-71 is like the Xmen airplane. That is like the iconic Xmen airplane. And then they do like what they do in all these movies anymore is they blow up the iconic thing. It's like, you know, when the Enterprise first exploded, the first time you saw the Enterprise explode, it was like, holy crap, they destroyed the Enterprise. And now, like, they just destroy the Enterprise like every movie just because. They're like, oh, well, people really liked it when we destroyed the Enterprise the first time. It's like, well, no, the reason we liked it was because we had seen the Enterprise for like 8 or 10 or however many years, and then you blow it up. Then it's like you have this attachment to, like, the Enterprise is as much a character as anything else. But now they just blow it up for shits and giggles. And the same thing, like with the SR-71, I mean, that was their plane. Like, they got the SR-71. That was the plane, especially in the 1980s. That was the coolest plane out there. Again, some young people don't realize SR-71. That was like, wow, that's insane, right? And then they just kind of like blow up the SR-71 and everything else. Apparently, so later, they can fly a different plane. But you're like, but it's the 1980s. It's the SR-71. That's what we're interested in, right? You know, Storm is this powerful character. But then they kind of just gloss over that. She's just this, like, just bit part. Oh, you're a thief, and then Apocalypse gets you, and now you're doing stuff. And that was the thing, like, with Angel, right? Angel, and like I say, Angel, I really remember, because I was following this back in the 80s. I think his guy's wings cut off, something. Again, it was the 80s, and it was comic books, so I don't quite remember. But I remember, it, like, touched me. It really did touch me. But then, like, in this, they have this weird scene, and that was like, there was all these scenes, but the scenes don't really seem to make sense, so, you know, it's 1983 or whatever, and then they show this cage, and there's this fight match in the cage, and it seems to be like in Eastern Europe or something. And you don't really understand why there's a fight match in a cage. Is this people want to fight? Are these people being forced to fight? There's like no explanation. And then you've got Angel in there. It's like, oh, okay, and Angel's this badass, and he whips this really fat person. And you're like, oh, okay. But like I say, you don't really understand at all what's going on. And then they bring in Nightcrawler. And then there's like this weird comment about, we have to fight or they'll shoot us. And so you think, then you realize, oh, they've been captured and kidnapped and they're being forced to fight. But there's no real, like, explanation as to why this is. It's just like, oh, yeah, you know, humans. Humans just capture mutants and make them fight. There's no, like, backstory. It's not even like you have, like, some mastermind sitting back going, ha, 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 mutants killed my kid or whatever, and now I'm going to have them fight. There's not even, like, betting on the side. There's not even, like, there's no, like, really any kind of storyline that you understand. There's just this cage match, and then of course, to make it worse, the outside of the cage has to be electrified, because again, nowadays, you can't just have ice cream. You gotta have ice cream and toppings and whipped cream and a cherry and a liver on top. I don't know why you gotta put liver on top of sundaes anymore, but obviously if you don't put fucking liver on top of your sundaes, it's just not a sundae, right? And so it's all electrical, and so you're like, oh, okay, and then they're doing this whole fight thing, and then like Angel's doing all this stuff. But again, there's no run up to Angel. There's no in-depth Angel. You don't know where the hell Angel came from. You don't really care about Angel. Angel's just yet another fucking prop in the show. And then Nightcrawler does this weird teleport, grabs him around the neck and like throws him into the cage. But of course, for whatever reason, the cage is electrified, and so you see Angel's wing get hurt. But it's like he gets hurt. It's like the wings kind of melt or whatever. And you look at it, but his wings don't get cut off. His wings don't get broken. He just gets beat against a thing, and you're like, yeah, okay, so Nightcrawler won that match. And then, like, you're just going along, and then Apocalypse goes and picks up, like, Storm. Because, you know, why not? And then Apocalypse goes to pick up Angel, and you see Angel, like, he's all drinking and he's all drunk. And so, like, because I know the story, I get the point, oh, when he hit the thing, that must have really hurt his wings. But, like, they don't put that into the movie. You don't really grasp that. It's like, it looks like he's slightly injured. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it looks like he broke the equivalent of broken a bone. I mean, yeah, you're hurt, but you should recover. I mean, like I say, if you've got singed feathers or whatever, they should grow back. It seems like that kind of thing. Like, oh, okay, he should be hurt for like a couple of months maybe, but then it'll come back. But then he's all like drinking and all like drunk, and then he kind of sort of flies down but hobbles, and so you get the idea, oh, they're trying to make this out, I guess, to his injury is more. And then Apocolypse, holds him down or whatever, and like creates these metal wings out of his back. And then Angel flicks the metal wings, and the metal feathers like go into the wall, and he's like, ha ha ha. But again, you don't really see like a transformation. I mean, like, this was very, very pivotal. It was like a big thing in the Marvel and the mutant verse when this happened to him. And here, I mean, you don't really know. I mean, like, he could have been a sadistic bastard in the first place. Like, you don't know Angel well enough to care if he turned bad. You don't even know that he's not bad to begin with, right? There's no plot there. And then it was going along, and so he picks up Storm, and then he picks up Angel, and then he figures out about Professor Xavier. Like, Xavier is like trying to talk to Magneto or whatever telepathically, and then Apocalypse is like, oh, that is the mutant I need. And so then Apocalypse and all of them just teleport, because they can just teleport anywhere they want, and that's where they go to the school, and that's where everything kind of blows up when they kidnap Professor Xavier. Again, it's kind of like really just like, okay. And before that, when he picked up Magneto seemed to be the only storyline that they actually bothered to do a storyline with, weirdly enough. Like, so Magneto was in Poland, and he had a wife, and he had a daughter, and then he does this thing, and they find out they're mutants, and then his wife and daughter end up dying. But you gotta say, the way they end up dying, I mean, the poor bastard. They have this bow and arrow scene. So these people come to arrest him, and they know he's Magneto from the last movie. And so they don't have any metal on him. And so they have these bows and arrows. And so his daughter's getting taken away from him. And somehow she uses mutant powers, and all these birds start attacking them. And then this one guy with a bow and arrow accidentally releases the arrow, and it then goes through and kills both the daughter and the wife, which literally would have to be about the worst luck a human being could have. It would be like having 100-sided die and saying, if you roll 100 twice, you will release the arrow and it will go through both of them. Because you got to think about it. He accidentally releases the arrow. And so it takes a little bit of aiming to actually hit something with a bow and arrow. And so the fact that he hit anybody at all, and then the thought that randomly hitting anybody at all, it would be lethal. And then to say it was such a powerful bow, and it wasn't even a compound bow. If you looked at it, it wasn't even a compound bow. And it was so powerful that it would go entirely through two people and kill them. And you're just like, that was made up for the movie. Again, I don't mind, like, even that they killed the wife and daughter. That's not horrible. Killed the wife and daughter. But it was just so, like, really? And then, of course, Magneto kills them, and that's when Apocalypse comes and grabs him and all that kind of stuff. And then they start doing this thing where Magneto can now control all the metal in the earth. Like, so instead of, rings and all that kind of stuff, he reaches down so he can control the metal in the earth, and he, like, destroys Auschwitz that way. Where it's just, like, this huge scene. But again, it doesn't even really make any sense. It's like, hey, let's make a big scene of destruction. Because they've got, like, bricks and all that kind of stuff going around. And that's the kind of thing with Magneto. Yeah, I understand he can deal with a little bit of metal or whatever. But it doesn't seem like he should be, like, controlling, like, bricks and completely destroying buildings and all that kind of stuff. But, hey, okay. And then they're going along, and then that was the thing. So they're going along, and the school explodes. So that is where, Apocalypse picks up Magneto or whatever. And then they go to the school, and the school blows up. And then after the school blows up, like, fucking like 2 minutes later, they're like picking out the crap out of their clothes or whatever, and then Stryker, so Colonel Stryker now, you know, Stryker, the guy who screwed around with Wolverine, because you got to throw another character, you got to throw in another name. Right? Gotta throw in a name. I like Stryker. I like the character of Stryker. Stryker's always been a good character. But then they kind of just throw him in. Like, all of a sudden, like, the attack on the school was completely spontaneous. It wasn't like a scheduled event. So how is it that the school gets attacked, and then like 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes later, there are these military helicopters coming in already? Right? And then they come in, and then they shoot these guns off in the air, and all the mutants collapse for some reason. Except for a couple. Except for Jean Grey, and Scott Summers, and Nightcrawler, right? They don't collapse. And everybody else collapses. And then Stryker says, I want these few mutants. For whatever reason. You don't really understand. It's Beast, and it's the blue one, and Jennifer Lawrence, yeah, was that whoever it was, you know, the one off of Hunger Games. That's what this should have been called, too, because there's so much in there, and she's all like, fight, revolution. This should have been Hunger Games 5. Should have been Hunger Games 5, right? But for whatever reason, so Stryker takes them away, and then the 3 people stow away on board that are still awake. And then they go to Stryker's mountain headquarters. But it's like, you know, I always think of like Professor Xavier's School for the Gifted is somewhere like in the Northeast. I think it's supposed to be in like New York State. But then they have this helicopter, and it's flying over like mountains, like more mountainous than the Rockies, like fucking like Himalayas or something. So you're like, where the hell are they going, right? But anyways, then they go to this base, and there's this whole thing where they're running around, and so the ones that were captured get thrown again into yet another cage with nasty stuff around it, like electric stuff around it. And Stryker says, I'm Colonel Stryker. And they're like, why are we here? And he's like, because they needed another character on this movie. Right? They don't really explain why the hell Stryker's there. And so then the ones that are free are running around the base, and then they find like the generator room, right? So they're like, oh, okay, so we can like blow up the generator or whatever, and then that will release the locks, you know, fine, whatever. And then they get in that room, but again, the generator room, not a different room, the room that supposedly has a generator in it, and then there's a cage, in the room with the generator, and there's a beast inside. You're like, okay. And I kind of wondered who the beast was. I didn't realize who it was. And so then all these people are running around the base trying to find these 3 that are running around. And so Jean Grey can do this thing where she can make people not think that they see them. So essentially makes them invisible. And so she makes them invisible and then undoes the latch in the cage. And then guess who comes out? Yes, Weapon X. Good old Wolverine. And he's got like that thing on his head. Do you remember? There was one of the comic books from like the early 90s where he had this big computer contraption on his head for some reason. I don't remember that series. But I do remember that. That was a visual image. But he just runs out with that on his head. And then he just like starts killing people. He just starts killing like everybody. And you're like, why? Well, I mean, like, he's just grunting or whatever, and then Jean Grey like looks into his head and like supposedly gives him back some memories, and then he runs off, and then you're just like, what was that? You know what I'm saying? And I kept going through the movie, and then there's this whole thing, and then somehow Apocolypse uses Xavier's brain to like launch all the nuclear missiles in the world straight up into space. And you're like, oh, okay. So that's another visual thing. Like, there's all this, like, visual stuff and people and all this stuff just, like, thrown in. And then finally, when I left the movie, was then Magneto starts reaching into the earth to, like, try to screw with all the metal in the earth so that it will destroy the entire planet. Or something along those lines. At which point they're like at NORAD, and they have a 1980s computer, big old wall-mounted 1980s computer screen. They'll say, we have not seen gravitational forces like this before. I was just like, I'm done. It's like, I kind of sort of need to pee. I don't really need to pee that much. Like, I could like literally wait till the end of this movie before I go pee. But I think I'm just gonna leave now. Because I just don't, there is nothing that interesting about this movie. It is like name dropping and CGI and huge CGI effects. But that's the thing like with CGI is it's so like now that they can do CGI well, it's so easy to overdo things and just make the scale of them absolutely absurd. Like right at the end, like when I was leaving, it's like Apocolypse made this pyramid like in the middle of, I don't know, the desert or something. But it was just like huge beyond scale. And you're just like, I don't care about any of these characters. Like you think about that, like with Jean Grey, like I talked about Angel, but like with Jean Grey and Scott Summers, that was a love, and that was a passion, right? I mean, they get married and they have kids, and there's this whole thing with the Phoenix. I mean, that is like, again, that's another, if you're a teenager, that's a very moving storyline. But you see what's her name and what's his name, and there's like no chemistry on the screen. Like I have to say, like with the first X-Men, I felt like there was a chemistry, whoever the hell they were, Jean Grey and Scott Summers in the first X-Men series. Whoever they were as actors, I felt like there was a chemistry there. And that was the thing, is like they were soulmates. And then Jean Grey looked over at Wolverine. Like, and there was always like this weird dynamic where it was like Jean Grey wanted to love and have kids with Scott Summers. But, you know, if Scott Summers would just like disappear for a couple of days, she'd go like shag Wolverine. You know what I'm saying? But like, you know, watching this again, like I say, with that connection, you know, like I say, that whole thing with Scott Summers and Jean Grey and that whole connection that they're X-Men and that, there was none of that there. This woman is called Jean Grey and this guy is called Scott Summers. And they kind of sort of like each other. And you're just like, okay, I don't get it. I don't get it. So that was a story. Up until about the halfway mark when I just left. So I don't know if it's superhero movies are jumping the shark or if I've jumped the shark. Because I remember talking with like older people back when I was young. And I really liked most of the movies that were coming out. And I would talk with older people and they would talk about how horrible the movies were. And I would always say, oh, you're just overthinking it. And so I don't know, like with these superhero movies or whatnot, is it that I am now overthinking it? Maybe because I did read all these comic books as a kid. I expect more out of these comic books than I should expect out of these movies than I should expect out of these movies. Or are they really just becoming absolute and utter drivel? Because I just don't get like in all these new like sci-fi movies and all that kind of stuff, there just doesn't seem to be any connection to the characters. Like there doesn't seem to be any caring about the characters. I talk about that with the Star Wars movie. The thing that appalled me the most with Star Wars is you have Han Solo. Like Han Solo is like one of the defining characters of all time in the cinema. Like Han Solo is like, you know what I'm saying? There are very, very, very few characters that have ever been created that reach the height of just everybody knows who the hell Han Solo is. You know, Han Solo, Indiana Jones, you know, Darth Vader, E.T., you know, some of the, but I mean, like there's probably like 30 characters in movies that are at the level of like Han Solo and everybody's in the public consciousness, right? But then you go through Star Wars and then he just gets like killed and like, right? Oh, there's this son that he's supposed to care about and the son goes, oh, boo-hoo, and then kills him and then drops him off. And there's no like, ah! And then people are like, no! And then like 30 seconds later, they're beep, 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 beep. You're just like, really? Really? That's how you kill off like Han Solo, like one of the greatest characters to ever exist in cinematic history. And you just stab him and chuck him off. That's it, done. You're like, what? And that's what I don't understand. Like I say with these movies, like I say with this one, or like I say with the Star Trek ones. I've seen the last two, and they've been like absolutely horrendous, and I'm sure the next one will be as horrendous. And it's like one of those things, and that's why like talking about with Angel or Jean Grey and Scott Summers, is I remember I was watching J.J. Abrams when he was talking about. Doing Star Trek. So he was talking about, because he did Star Trek and he did Star Wars. Horrible idea. But anyways, because he was talking about when he was going to do the Star Trek movies. And then was the interesting thing that I realized that he was saying is that he hadn't watched Star Trek before. He had not been a Trekkie. Trek had not been interesting to him. So once he had been hired for the project, then he went back and watched Star Trek. And so what was interesting, was curious, is then he talked about, because this was before the movie came out, and he kind of gave a knowing nod and said, yeah, we threw a few things in there for the fans. And I remember being very, very displeased with that idea. And that was like kind of one of those cringe-worthy moments, and I realized how bad it was probably going to be. Because the thing with Star Trek is, as goofy and as cheesy and as campy as it was, you didn't feel like they were throwing things in. The trouble with tribbles, right? They took those fucking tribbles seriously. Like when you go back and you watch that 1960s, The Trouble with Tribbles, it might be campy as hell, but in that campy ass world, they took the tribbles very seriously. Again, like I say, with The Wrath of Khan, it may have been campy and goofy as hell, but they took it seriously. And then, what's really weird is they've gone from campy, so it's no longer campy. It's very spit, and it's very polished, and it's very clean. So they've made the visuals and all that much more professional. But then it feels like that life force, again, that feeling that the characters matter and all that kind of stuff, is what gets drained out of these movies anymore. And I think it's going to be what ends up killing this whole genre of movie. And I'm curious what we'll see, what comes next. Because I don't think, when the next Star Wars comes out, I'm probably going to skip it in the theaters. I'm not going to say I'm not going to watch it at all, because, when I fly somewhere, I like to have movies. So I'll probably watch it on a plane or something. But again, I used to watch everything that was sci-fi or whatever, and I'm looking at Star Wars, and I'm gonna probably skip Star Wars. Again, with Xmen, I'm probably done. Their whole Xmen thing. I'll probably watch Doctor Strange, because I do. That's one thing with the Disney Marvel universe, is they really do give a life to their characters. I liked Civil War. I think Captain America has his head up his ass, and I think some of the morals that it's teaching the younger generation. These whippersnappers don't understand real patriotism, right? I have some real arguments about what the takeaways of Captain America are, but I enjoyed Captain America, and that was Deadpool. I enjoyed Captain America, and I enjoyed. But any more of these Marvel universes or the X-Men universes, I think I'm gonna skip. I think I'm just gonna skip until they come out on DVD or iTunes or whatever. Maybe even skip them then, because they're just so. I don't know. I guess people out there can agree or disagree. I see a lot of people liked X-Men Apocalypse, but I don't. Like I said, I can't remember the last movie I walked out of. There are very few movies in the movie theater that I walk out of. There are sometimes I'll rent things on iTunes, and again, I didn't watch them in the movie theater because I was I'm not sure if it's going to be good. And then I get it on iTunes, and I was it's not good. So I do click things off of iTunes. It's not like I watch all movies all the way through. But this was a movie, actually walking out of a movie theater. I'm not sure the last time I did that. And I really, really don't do it very often. But I was just sitting there. And there's just this is just pain. This is just agony. This is just sitting there watching all of these visual effects. I hope something changes. What I do worry about, and this is one of those things, you talk about age and you talk about mentality and how things are different. And one of the things I do worry about, and why I might be becoming a crotchety middle-aged man, is, when I watch some of these movies nowadays, with the Star Trek and all that kind of stuff, and people like them, and they keep making them, what I do worry about is that they are made for more of this, not the video game generation, but like the let's play generation. Because there's this whole, you know, like I say, it's fine if you like it. But there's all these people that like to watch other people do video games, which I don't understand. Again, nothing against it. If you like watching video games, fine, watch video games. I don't personally understand it. And so that's like with my concern, like with movies, is so many of them, they're getting to be so much about CGI, and they're getting to be so much about special effects, and they're getting to be so little about plot and character development. My concern is that we are getting to that time when there's starting to be I don't know if it's starting, it's probably already started, but there is that shift between what was created so that my generation would enjoy it versus what is being created so that the next generation can enjoy it. And I think that's where you get a little tragic, because as you realize when you get into that age range where it's you realize the marketers and all that, for whatever reason, they just don't care about you anymore. Again, if you look at it, like with the marketing demographics, it's all about like males, like 18 to like 45 or whatever. Like that is like literally all they care about. Which, the good thing about my videos is they fit that demographic very well. One of the reasons why I'm not worried about getting sponsors, once I get around to having sponsors, is because my demographics fit that very well. Unfortunately, what you start to see as you start to get to that edge of the 45 or whatever, is that you start to see that the marketers really are not targeting your age group anymore. And again, like I say, and that it might be a shift. Because that's what you can do if you're lazy. You know, if you're lazy, if I want to be a lazy middle-aged guy, I could talk about how the movie studios are being lazy, and I could talk about how the movie studios don't understand how to make a movie anymore, and I could complain and bitch and whine. But that's the thing that you have to realize, is again, so many things in life are decisions. Again, they're just decisions. There's not right decisions and wrong decisions. There are decisions that are focused towards certain outcomes. And so what my concern here, like I say, getting like to be 2 months off of 40 or whatever, is that when I start to see more and more and more movies that look this way, my concern isn't that they don't know how to make movies anymore. My concern isn't that they don't know how to do character development anymore. My concern isn't that, you know, there aren't any good writers anymore. My concern is that the movie studios have decided that's simply not what the kind of movies that they want to create. What they want to create is these movies where literally the actors are not much more than set dressing. And again, that's just a decision. That's just they say where the money is again, it's all about special effects. It kind of reminds me like the last, I had a PlayStation 3 for a little while. When my wife got sick, I bought a PlayStation 3 to play around with. And I got like Final Fantasy, like whatever Final Fantasy was out at that time. And it sucked. It sucked. I don't know why anybody plays Final Fantasy anymore. Because before, like, I mean, they had their movies and they had, you know, it wasn't the most free experience playing it. I mean, you did have to stick within their rules, but there was a bit of rules, or there was a bit of freedom you could play around with. But then I was playing this Final Fantasy, and like literally, you go from like one movie scene to you run down a hallway, and you can only basically run forward down this hallway to another movie scene, and then you run down this ice ramp. And you can only go one way on the ice ramp until you fight a dragon. And then you go blah, blah, blah. And then after the dragon, you have a movie scene. And basically, it was like one of those things where it was kind of like movie scenes interspersed with you not really doing much, just pushing forward or whatever with the controller, which I didn't understand. It was like, dude, give me a movie or give me a game. This sucks. Because again, it wasn't like there was any freedom. It wasn't like, oh, maybe I'll explore this door. Maybe I'll explore... No, you just had to go down the hall or whatever. And so that's what I worry about. Is like maybe like the movies and all that now are just towards that type of mindset. Which means soon I will not be watching any more sci-fi. I might be getting that... It might be 40 years old. You know, like... Again, like I say, back in October or whatever... October is like the last time I had beer. 39 basically ended up giving up beer. I hate to say it might be like 40 I give up sci-fi movies because they're just not worth it anymore. I just don't understand what they're doing with these movies. Especially, like I say, with these superhero movies. Again, like I say, at least the Marvel universe, I vaguely understand. Again, I like the characters. I like Captain America, even if I think he has his head up his ass. But I liked him, right? But like these other ones, like I've been watching like some of the ones on TV too. Like I watched the season of Legends of Tomorrow, and I don't get. They're all assholes. Like I don't get that show. Like every single one of them is like an asshole, and they're all doing like horrible things. And yet they're the legends. They're the heroes of tomorrow. And you're just like, I don't get what's going on here. It's like, but they're all assholes. Like, I don't know. That's my thought. Oh, that's my thought. But yes, I officially walked out of it. I don't know. I mean, if you want to, like, I think you'll get a fine experience if you watch it at home. Wait for the iTunes movie. Because there wasn't anything, like, I didn't watch it in 3D. I don't like 3D. Screw it. Like, my problem with 3D movies, honestly, is how I watch movies is, like, I kind of put my head like this. So, like, my head is just, like, a little bit off kilter. I got a big head. I really do. I actually have a big head. I've got, like, what the hell? My head is like extra large. So it takes a little bit of energy to keep it up there. So, when I'm in a movie, I kind of put my head I cock it a little bit to the side. It's just one of those things that I do. Don't know why I do it. I just do. No real reason to change it other than 3D movies. And the problem, like, I don't watch 3D movies because when I cock my head to the side, the issue is then however the lines are with the 3D, it then puts it off. And so it actually starts to hurt my eyes after a little bit because they then try to compensate. And so in order to watch a 3D movie, you have to basically keep your head perfectly straight, which really sucks for 2 or 3 hours. So I don't normally watch 3D movies anymore. So I saw it as in the normal movie theater. And I do have to say, like, with the special effects and all that kind of stuff, it really didn't, like, wow me. It really wasn't like, oh, you have to see this on the big screen. If you don't see this on the big screen, then you're missing something. I think, if you've got a decent size, 52-inch or whatever LCD at home, I think that is more than good enough to watch this movie. Because that's the thing, like, even with all the stuff that they do, it just seems, you're just so, like, disconnected from it. Like, like, I remember watching, like, Oblivion. Was it Oblivion with Tom Cruise? The one where they're like they think they're the last 2 people on the planet and it's really an alien, right? And so like with that, he's like flying over these vistas, and so when you see it on the big screen, you're like, wow, this is on the big screen. Or when you watch Space and it was on the big screen, you're like, wow, it's on the big screen. There's a lot of movies that when you see it on the big screen, like even with Captain America, most of the Marvel movies, you see it on the big screen, you really feel like there's a different experience when you watch it on the big screen. And I have to say, like with Xmen and Apocolypse, it's like you look at it and you're like, I don't. There was nothing about the big screen that really like drew me into the story. Like I said, I don't know what it is. There was something like very. It's like the glass thickness. I talk about going to the ghetto in Baltimore, and you go to a convenience store, and they've got like 3-inch thick glass, and you feel very far away from the person on the other side. You feel like there's this big barrier, even though it's glass, even though you can see through it. And that's how it kind of felt like watching Apocalypse. It felt like there was this massive barrier between the audience and what was going on screen. Whereas, like I say, with the Marvel, the Disney Marvel universe, you feel like more it's like saran wrap. I mean, you know what's on this other side of it. You're not part of it, but you don't feel like you're that far away. Like with this, it was all just like raw. And you got all the dour stuff. And again, this is one thing I don't understand. Like with modern media, is so much of this modern media, they're trying to get in this whole hyper reality and like dour and gritty. And again, I don't know what your people's life is like, but like my life has enough dour and gritty stuff. I've got bills and people die, and there's health concerns and there's legal concerns, and I've got like all of these real things I have to worry about in life. And so like when I watch a movie, I want escapism. I want to watch a movie and get away from it. I don't want to worry about lawyers, and I don't want to worry about doctors, and I don't worry about right. But it's like, so nowadays, everything, so much of this is, it has to be dark, and it has to be gritty, and it has to be real. It's like, no, it doesn't. No, we can be happy-go-lucky. Can we all be happy-go-lucky? Please, I'm asking you. I say that hyperrealism. I don't get it though, but I do have to say, again, maybe it's just me getting old, because people like love The Walking Dead and all that kind of stuff. And again, I liked The Walking Dead for like the first season. I thought The Walking Dead was really good for the first season, but then it just kept like dragging on. And like how much misery. And that's what I don't understand, like with this whole new thing, like with misery porn and all that kind of stuff, is it really is really fucking harsh. And like, right, I don't know, like, because it's not campy, it's not goofy, it's not, because that's, I think the last Walking Dead show that I saw, when I just gave up on it, was when they were gonna rape or they threatened to rape the Chinese guy's girlfriend. So there's a little Chinese guy that's been there from the beginning, Asian American that's been there from the beginning, and then he got a little boopy girlfriend. And then they were, again, they keep running into all these homicidal camps or whatever. And there was this one part where the big thug like picks her up and like bends her over the table and pulls out a knife. And I'm just looking at this like, why do I want to watch this? Like, I mean, back in the day, I've had friends that have been raped. There is nothing happy-go-lucky about rape. There is nothing about rape where you walk away with good, happy feelings about. Rape, for whatever reason, really rips into women. It is like the after effects of rape is really bad. There's just nothing good to it, right? And so, like, where so many of these shows now, it's like they're just like throw in things like rape just as like and why don't we rape a woman? You know what would be good? You know what would be good in this episode right about now? How about we just rape a woman? And again, it's not like behind closed doors. Not that it should be any better, but it's not campy. I mean, it's like serious. That's how rape happens. And you're like, why am I watching this? I mean, like, why am I watching a woman get half raped? Where is the joy here? Where is the happiness? And again, that's for me. Like I say, that's why I stopped watching Game of Thrones. So, like I say, because all these characters you care about, and then they like kill them in really horrible ways. Like the last Game of Thrones show that I saw, and I was just like, I'm done with this, because it was the little short guy. I really like the short guy. Peter Dingle or whatever. He's just an awesome actor. He needs to be in more stuff. But anyways, so he was like on trial or whatever, and then he gets a champion to defend him. And so the champion is going to defend him against the big guy. There's this huge, the dog or whatever, right? And so the guy is like stabbing the dog, and he's winning, he's fighting, and blah blah blah. But he won't give up. He won't kill dog or whatever, because he wants dog to admit again to like raping and fucking killing his wife and kids. You're like, God damn, can we just put the rape down for a second? And then like there's just this scene where like the big guy just trips him up and then grabs his head with both hands and just like crushes it like a grape. And then I'm just sitting there, and I was just like, I'm done. I'm done. I just give up with Game of Thrones. I'm just done. Like, because I really like the character. Again, one of the things that Game of Thrones does very well is they do character development very well, and they get you to care about the character. Like, if you care about the character, you care about the character. And I really like that character. And then just sitting there, and just in a heartbeat, as he gets his head grabbed and gets like popped like a grape, and like I don't think I could sleep that night. I really think that kind of fucked me up for like a week. Like, there was like a week where I was just like, because again, I talk about that, like, they talk about that psychologically, where in a lot of ways, and this is something just to realize, like if you have issues with TV or whatever, that the human brain has a very difficult time separating TV from reality. Because again, television didn't exist in the woods. It's not like, oh, let's go pick a TV off the guava tree, right? And so like when the brain sees things, it interprets things very naturally. And so like I say, like when I saw that guy's get his head like pop like a grape, it was just like, right? It kind of fucked me up in the head. I was just like, oh, I don't want to see this anymore. And like I said, and that's what I find like with so much of these movies and these TV shows. And it's not even reality. It's like this hyper, like gritty crap. It's like, why do I want to watch this? I want to watch cheesy things. It was like I used to watch Eureka. You remember Eureka? I loved Eureka. And then they tried to make Eureka all real. Like I remember that because I was watching it like during the financial crisis. And so Eureka had like 2 seasons. It was this goofy, cheesy show about scientists in the middle of the Pacific Northwest. And it was funny. It was, okay, you got this down-to-earth sheriff with all these goofy-ass scientists. And then all of a sudden, like in season 3, they bring in a new director for Global Dynamics or whatever it was called, the big institution that was there, and they start doing like they start doing cost cutting, and they start laying people off, and people start having to prove why they're worth something to the company, and like I'm watching this show literally as I have clients start refusing to pay me for work that's already been accomplished. As I have clients that are refusing to even call me back about bills, right? As more and more clients, just simply decide not to have work done. So like I come home at night and I pop a beer, and guess what the last fucking thing in the world that I want to see is? Like all day I'm sitting there trying to figure out how to keep my employees paid, how to pay the utility bills, and how the hell I'm going to get any money out of any of my clients. Like again, like I say, when the financial crisis finally hit us, it was the type of thing where if I had tried to sell, a 2012 server for $1, people would be like, I don't know, I might need that dollar. Right? I mean, when people, I say they closed up their wallets, they fucking closed up their wallets, right? And so like all day I'm worried about how the hell I'm gonna get through this. And then I go home and then I turn on Eureka and there's like cost cutting in Eureka. And it's like, the last thing in the world that I want to see right now? The last thing in the world that I want to see right now is cost cutting on TV. You know what I want to see? I want to see Agent Carter or Sheriff Carter or whatever, and I want to see him goofing off with scientists and looking like an idiot, and I want to see bubblegum that who the hell knows what. That's what I want to see. I don't want to see like, what is that? I don't want to see a reflection of the world that I'm dealing with. You know what? I deal with that world at that time 12 hours a day. So when I come home, I don't want to deal with it anymore. I want fluff. But maybe that is me. Maybe everybody out there is like, Eli, you just can't handle hyperrealism. Maybe I can't. But I just don't get it. I hope we get back to days of like a little bit more fluff or something. Because camp is not a bad thing. Caring about characters isn't a bad thing. Like all this stuff, like I say, it's just like this gritty, like in your face. Again, like I say, I was watching I watched Dawn of Justice, and I'm not gonna watch any more of the DC movies. Again, I may watch them on iTunes because I'm flying somewhere, but I am not. Even Suicide Squad, fuck it, I'll watch it on iTunes if I watch it at all. Because like I just don't. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? The world is hard enough. I think this is a problem like a lot of people have. Is like the world is hard enough. Again, you have enough issues in your life. And again, like I say, with stress and all that kind of stuff. You have enough issues in your life. Do you really need to go to like the movies? Or does your entertainment need to feed that? That's one of the things like I wonder about, like with all these people, and they think the United States has gotten so much more violent, which in the past year it actually has gotten more violent. But if you look at it, from the 1990s, truth be told, for all the youngins out there, I actually went to school at the height of violence in the United States. Kids really did get shot and killed for starter jackets. Kids really did get shot and killed for their Air Jordans, right? Like I say, I knew gun runners. I knew people that were armed all the time. I had Uzis dropped on the table in front of me back when I was in high school, right? So, here's the thing, right? Since then, everything actually has gotten a lot more peaceful. Again, we now have Chicago doing whatever the hell Chicago is doing. But more or less, things really have gotten more peaceful. Things really have gotten more safe. Like, legitimately, across the board, when we talk about the stats, they really are they're really true. They really are true. Again, there's goofing with the stats, but more or less, it's all significantly down. And yet everybody is so scared, and everybody thinks like everything is coming to an end, and everything is so horrible, blah blah blah. And I think the big reason for that is if you look on normal TV, is like everything is like crime drama anymore. Like Law and Order, there's like 3 or 4 versions of Law and Order. There's 3 or 4 versions of NCIS. There's 3 or 4 versions of CSI. Then you've got the random ones like Castle and everything else. And so you go home, and like my wife and I really aren't big into those kind of things. We watch, X-Files or whatever. But, if you're the type of person that really likes those kinds of TV shows, you do have to think about what it does to your brain. Like every night you're learning about murder. You're watching murders and you're watching rape and you're watching all this crap. Like I remember when Law and Order SVU came out, so Special Victims Unit. And so it was supposed to be an entire show essentially about sex crimes, right? Essentially about sex crimes. And I remember watching that. Like, I watched one episode the first season where like a 4-year-old got raped or something. I just remember watching that. I was like, these jackasses are out of their minds. Who in the world wants to spend an hour watching crime dramas about sex crimes? Again, I take sex crimes seriously. This shit needs to be dealt with in the real world. But I mean, there is no happy ending with a sex crime. There is no, you know what I'm saying? Like I said, I've known violent people. And I hate to say, with a lot of violent crime, there can be a hoo-hoo, right? There's a hoo-hoo. They don't like it. It's not politically correct to say it, but hoo-hoo, good guy won, or bad guy won, right? Right? There's some kind of, but like sex crime, there just ain't. Sex crime is just all kinds of bad. Just everything about sex crime is bad. And that's the thing. And the thing is, like with violent crime, you can actually have legitimately stable, good people who end up committing violent crime because of situations. I knew somebody that genuinely a good person that made really stupid decisions. And basically, he went to rob a store, didn't figure that the person behind the counter would do anything. Person behind the counter pulled a gun. He shot the guy. Again, horrible. Definitely should have gone to prison. But again, it's not. Whereas, like I say, well, you deal with sex crimes. One, I mean, the person that gets violated is just. I don't know what the fuck it does to people. Like you hear so much about this. Like you even hear this from some women talking about rape. How like, oh, it shouldn't be taken that way. And again, I don't know. Like you hear this from women. I just want to like smack women, but you can't smack women because that would be like, I don't know, something else. But it's like if you've actually dealt with victims of rape, it just does something to their brains. It just, well, and again, like if you're a man, because you always think about men, oh, okay, well think about this if you're a guy. If you're thinking about this. Think about, you go to a bar one night. You go to a bar and you're drinking beer. The next thing you know, you're pressed down on your stomach, getting a pole shoved up your ass. Right? Imagine going to the bar, having a drink, and then waking up, getting a dick shoved up your ass. And then imagine it going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth until it splooges all over you. And then you get shoved into a corner. How you gonna feel about that? Are you just gonna brush it off? Are you just gonna wash your ass off and then go about your day? Just go to work tomorrow and be like, yeah, hey, somebody shoved a dick up my ass. Yeah, strangest thing. Oh, well, went to a bar. You know what you never know what happens when you go have a beer. I can tell you, the toughest, meanest SOBs I've ever known in my life, if they got roofied and had a dick shoved up their ass and then splooged on, they wouldn't be doing well, right? And so that's the thing, because I think with sexual crime, I mean, you have to think about it, like with your body parts, there's this whole thing about self-preservation, right? There's self-defense, fight or flight and all that kind of stuff. And so I think it really does something psychologically to you when your brain feels that you can't even defend something as close to you as your vagina or your ass, right? There's just something that, right? And so like I say, with the female, the rape part of that is just horrible. And then the other thing too is you see with the perpetrators of sex crimes, again, not two people have beer, you have sex, and then it's rape. I mean, like real, like violent sex crimes and all that kind of stuff. They're fucked in the head too. Half the time they're doing it because they had a dick rammed up their ass before, and so now they're trying to do it to somebody else. And so, like, you look at, like, sex crimes, there's just no happy side of that story. There's just nothing to that story. You're like, yeah, I'm out. And yeah, so, like, when Law and Order SVU came out, like, I saw, like, one episode of it and went, what the hell is wrong with people? And it's so funny, because that was, like, 15 years ago now. I was like, what the hell's wrong with people? Thank the spaghetti monster. This ain't gonna last more than a season. That's like 15 seasons. Might even still be on. And then you wonder, like, why everybody's so damn paranoid in life. And it's brutal. Like I say, the Law and Order stuff, that's all that gritty, like I say, that realistic stuff, it gets in your head. So I don't know. That's my thought of the media landscape. I've talked about that before in other venues. But yeah, I don't know. I think I might back off all the movies. I'll probably go see Independence Day. Because of nothing else, you know, Independence Day 1. That was a good movie for its time, so I'll go see Independence Day. But I think like Suicide Squad, I think some of these other ones that are coming out, I think I'm just going to skip the movie theaters. I really do. And again, I'm not snarking on the movie people. Maybe this is what they're targeting. Maybe they're legitimately, this is what the younger generation wants. I sadly am no longer part of younger generation, and therefore movies aren't going to be for me anymore. But yeah, because like I said, I just watch this stuff and I'm like, I don't understand why this is enjoyable anymore. I don't like, why is this supposed to be fun? I don't get it. I do not understand. And so that is my thought. That is my review on Xmen Apocolypse. Basically, walked out. Walked the hell out. Maybe it all makes more sense by the end of it, but I don't think it does. Because like I say, I don't walk out of many movies. Not many movies I walk out of. And that one was just so... You're just sitting there, like all these characters, you know, it's Psylocke and all that. And like with the whole Psylocke thing, like I didn't understand that. Because she actually goes from like this well-dressed, she's got like this Prada coat on, like this designer coat and all that. And she goes from like, because that was one of the things, like I was watching one of the interviews with her, and they're talking about the Psylocke character being all sexy. And she was like, well, I wanted to make sure that she was strong too. And it was so weird, because like when you first see Psylocke, I mean, she's dressed very she's dressed very well, and she is definitely an attractive woman, and she can still fight. She still pulls out her sword and pulls out her weird, whatever, the psychic blade or whatever. I mean, she's a badass, like, dressed in a reasonable amount of clothing. But then, like, they just strip her down to basically a bikini, because... And you're just like, I guess a 14-year-old needs something to wank to. But it doesn't make sense for the movie. Like I say, that doesn't like I say with that, like it doesn't like where did that uniform come from? Especially when you still have the Xmen running around in basically black body armor or whatever. Yeah. I do not know. But I don't have to know. All I have to do is talk to you folks for at least 60 minutes a day. And I'm at the hour and 7-minute mark. So I've done my job. So anyways, with that, I think I will go. My wife should be home soon. Soon, I guess. It's about 6 o'clock on Monday. She's getting back from her Byron Katie thing. That went on for about 4 days. So it'll be interesting to have her back again. It's always so weird. Like, it's so weird when your, like, spouse leaves, because then you have to get into new habits. And then when she comes back, you have to get back into your old habits. It's kind of like the whole reassimilation thing. But anyways, with that, we will call it a day, and then I'll talk to you folks tomorrow about something more philosophically interesting. I think I will talk about like why we trust certain people. I think that's what we'll talk about tomorrow. But anyways, we'll talk about something. Whatever comes to my mind then. So with that, we will call it a day, and I'll see you folks tomorrow.